Okay, folks, our first art history recorded will be about the Japanese Edo period. And let's see if I can start sharing my screen so that you guys can see what we're up to. So, what we have, whoa, let's go back to the beginning. Heavens. The Japanese Edo period. Basically, in Japan, they had similar artworks created in the monasteries by monks and priests and people in the courts of the emperors and those who were in charge. And so a lot of the artists were not well known and they didn't get recognition, but they painted in certain styles that were popular during that time, again, like the monks did for religious purposes and for commissioned work. During this period, which began in the early 1600s and then ended in the late 1800s, things started to change. There was a little bit more movement between Europe and Japan, not just China and Japan like there used to be, but in Europe. And so there was trading going on. And so what happened was that the merchant class, the middle class, the people who started to buy and sell and have shops, started to get bigger. And there was artists that started to create work, and they were able to sell these things. And so um, this is kind of one of the characteristics of this art period. So a lot of the works were made by independent artists, and they sold them to all kinds of people. The old Japanese painting schools really were the artists just did things that they were told to do and didn't necessarily have their own input into it. So that's the Japanese Edo period. One of the famous artists that came out of this period was a man named Hakusai. And I do not pronounce Japanese names very well, but this is the Great Wave of Kanagawa. Kanagawa, I think it's pronounced. Oh boy. Anyway, he's best known for doing woodblock prints. And woodblock prints are like stamps, basically, big stamps where you've got a raised surface that takes the ink and then it's stamped onto a piece of paper. Except this is a little bit different because they've got a big block of wood that they would carve their design into. There's a video at the end that you are going to watch. That's how woodblocks are created. But anyway, this is a very famous painting, and he's a very famous artist who produced a lot of work during this period. And so this is a big tsunami wave. You can see this boat down here and the little people paddling. Here's another boat that's getting swallowed up by the wave. There's another boat over here, which is kind of in the way. Go away. Anyway, so you can see this boat. And so this is a very famous painting of the time. And woodblock prints became very popular. Another type of art, another thing that they created art for was everyday scenes. And these skeletons were a type of a supernatural myth that happened in Japan. And so you can see they did paintings or woodblock prints, I'm sorry, relating to some of this everyday life stuff. It didn't necessarily wasn't religious anymore or landscapes. So I want you to notice all the detail in here and all the different colors that were used. One other thing was another woodblock print, as we know, koi fish, kind of popular during that time, and bonsai was everyday things, and so they did some woodblock prints using those images. Another type of art that was done during the Edo period was porcelain or ceramics. Porcelain is a type of clay. Porcelain is very hard and durable, and it's white. And so it was easy to decorate with bright colors because it was white for starters. It was called Arita ware because it was started in the city of Arita. And so when you talk about Arita ware, it's usually plates and jars that had a lot of detailed decoration in it and was brightly colored. One other thing that started to occur during this time period was Jiataku printing. And basically, it started, and this not over 100 years ago, this was over 100 plus years, 150 years ago. Anyway, the fishermen, you know how we could take pictures now of our fish and say, look at this giant fish I caught. Well, they didn't have cameras, and so this was for record keeping. They would take the fish and put ink on the fish or paint on the fish and press it into a piece of paper, and then they had a detailed record of what was caught. But look at just all the detail that you see on this fish. And it actually started to become an art form later. And so it was a way of everyday record keeping that turned into an art form. Another type of art that I know you've heard about before, go away, is manga. It's a style of Japanese comic books and graphic novels. And Hokusai also created these funny drawings um, for use for everyday people again. So they were comic books for people, which was not the usual before this. So he kind of was one of the starters of the manga. And here's examples of some of the cartoon drawings that they did. Everyday life things happening. This is water that he's in. And so here are the characteristics. I'll try to move this. So Edo is now known as Tokyo. And this was during the time of the last samurai warriors. They made a lot of art, art during this time because prints you could make quickly and you could make a lot of them. They also, because they were trading between Europe and Asia, they also incorporated a lot of Western elements into their art because they saw European works. And also in Europe, a lot of the Impressionist painters were learning about prints and putting Japanese style work into their prints. So there was a trade going on. Before this period, most artists were anonymous, but now they were becoming famous for their own work, like Hokusai became very famous. A lot of portraits and a lot of landscapes, a lot of details in the works, and a lot of different colors. So very detailed. Also, the porcelain ceramics were used in the tea ceremonies. They did a lot more woodblock printing because they were selling it now and there was high demand for it. Jiataku printing using real fish. You are going to be watching this video coming up, and it is about how Hokusai created the Great Wave. It just gives an example of how they did woodblock printing. So that is what you got happening.